I want to start this video by asking you, what do you think of this?
I'm freaked the fuck out. I'm laying there with my dog watching YouTube like I do every fucking night. Out of nowhere, I hear this woman say, "Hey!" There was no one there. I got full pins and needles. I fucking froze, and I swear to God, it felt like there was someone in my hallway standing at my door. You guys, I'm weirded the fuck out. I even called my fucking mom about this shit. I'm a grown ass man. I called my mom. But I'm telling you, this bitch's voice was clear as day. And she honestly sounded like she was a nice person. I ain't trying to be funny. I ain't bull. This really just happened. And I'm still trying to process. Okay, I'm calmed down a little bit. That was not a welcoming feeling. I'm laying there with the dogs, and something in my room goes flying and hits the ground. Dogs are going off and growling. One's still going off. That didn't feel good. That was not a happy, bright voice. That was not a welcoming. I was cold, to my bones, cold.
What do you think of that video? Has anything like that ever happened to you before? Anyway, it really reminds me of one particular Zoom session we had with Father Iannuzzi. Listen to this for a second.
I wanted to ask, and I'm sorry that it's still kind of a dark, back to that darker subject about the, possession and all that. I was thinking about different things, like if you buy things from secondhand stores or thrifting, how we can possibly protect ourselves as we bring things into our homes that we don't know may have. So that was something.
Yeah, I would always err on the side of caution when things look a little unusual. Like if you buy a statue that looks like something's not quite right, or even if you suspect anything, there's no harm in blessing it with holy water. And that's a way in which to get rid of it. And if things tend to go bump in the night with that object in the house, you can remove it from the house and see what happens, and see if it could be associated with that object or not. But here, it's case by case. I would strongly recommend counsel with a priest when it comes to things like this. But just to err on the side of caution, nothing wrong with sprinkling your home, the objects, and even having your house completely blessed. This is a practice that should be done once a year. This was the custom for many centuries, up until modernism crept in and families stopped asking the priest, or priests stopped going, whatever the reason is. But you can ask a priest to bless your home once a year. I'll close with this true story with this fires in California. This one family in that Palisades area that was burned with fire that was hotter than any human fire can produce, to the point in which it melted car rims. And when it melted, it didn't just melt in the spot, it kept on dragging for 15 feet. I'm not speaking on my own. I'm speaking of the comments of fire experts. In any event, there was this one family that had their home blessed at the beginning of this new year. And they did what was the custom for decades among Christians and Catholics. They would put, the three names or the three letters for each of the three wise men and the three crosses, and put the year on the door. That home was untouched. Every home around it was burnt. You could find this on the internet. I mean, right around them, everything is burned to white ash. Their home was not touched. Coincidence? I don't think so. So that's a good thing to do. Have your home blessed every year.
By the way, I'm sure we've all heard by now about what happened in Venezuela, but while I was reading updates on the situation, this one video popped up on my X feed, and I knew I had to share it with you guys.
In 2026, we see Mr. Nicolas Maduro defeated. Nicolas Maduro will flee Venezuela. He will not be captured, he will flee Venezuela. The United States should prepare because Mr. Donald Trump will fall seriously ill. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine is in conversation. As if they were calling for attention. I see this conflict will end. It will finish. They will raise the flag of peace.
Anyway, I've got another clip I want to share with you. Two witches talking about the moon. I know it sounds weird, but apparently that's a real thing they do. I'll play this one first, and then a couple of clips from The Exorcist related to these witches after this.
Lunar witchcraft and lunar witches does seem to be kind of an entry point for people. And there's just something so enthralling and fascinating about the moon. I think we all feel that way when we look up at her. And she just inspires us to magic. And the moon, as we see her, she's always whole, but we see her appearing differently at all times based on her position and our position. So as we move towards the end of the year, we can consider that we are in the waning phase. We're in the time of dissolution. This is the time to release and let go and to purify ourselves of those things that we don't want to carry forward with us anymore in our own practices and also in the world, especially in this country. I feel like we really are moving into that dark moon kind of energy where everything's breaking apart and everything that was hidden is really coming into view now so that we can deal with it instead of just building on top of that.
So now for the people who are doing this, whatever weird occult things that people do these days, probably they should listen to this one from Msgr Rossetti about how addictive the whole thing is.
When people come to us after years of practicing the occult, the darkness around them is quite striking. I had one young man come to us who had been a witch for 12 years, and he started his own coven. He kind of wanted to stop, but he couldn't. And I talked to him. I said, "My gosh, this darkness around you is so strong." He said he knew it, but he knew it was a result of all this divination stuff. But he couldn't give it up. It was. He said the power is addicting, and it is addicting. It's kind of like a drug. The farther down the dark path you go, the more it draws you in and it captures you, and you're addicted to the power. And Satan gives you just enough to make you say, okay, it's the next one, the next curse, the next spell, the next whatever. It's going to give me what I want. And it never does. As a matter of fact, it makes you worse and more miserable. And that's the way evil is. It makes you miserable.
If that is not enough to convince the people who are still doing the occult stuff to stop, hopefully this clip of Father Ripperger from one of his homilies might be able to. Listen to this, and there's a link to the full video in the description box below.
Avoid people who engage in witchcraft and do not allow them into your home. If this is not possible because you happen to be related to them or whatever the case may be, then avoid them as much as possible and make use of means of protection against them and pray for them that they will get out of the witchcraft. Normally, when people confess witchcraft, the penances have to be severe. And the reason being is because when people engage in witchcraft, the mere cessation and contriteness does not undo the damage. Because the damage has been unleashed and the demonic have been given a certain power over certain things because of people's involvement in it. And as a result, they have to do a great deal of penance in order to undo the damage that they've caused. While it might seem that this homily is fantastic, and that is probably because many people do not have contact with people who are involved with this stuff, but many others do. And you should be aware of these things so that you and your children do not fall into these things. Parents should strictly forbid their kids to be involved in these things, and you should make ample use of these sacramentals so that you do not succumb to the demonic influence caused by magic. Again, don't look under every rock. Avoid buying things and buying houses and things of this sort that people have been involved with magic, because you're only going to end up with problems. So avoid these things if possible. Be knowledgeable, don't be naive, but at the same time, don't be paranoid.
Here's the next case study I want to share. It's about a mom whose autistic son barely ever sleeps, and one night at 1 a.m, he's screaming that the elf moved. Check this out.
Mom, the elf got
And this, in some ways, though not directly related, reminds me of this clip of Father John Zeta. Listen to this.
See, one of the things that demons cannot kill you, even though they say they're going to kill you. They can't. They don't have that authority. All right. But one of the things they do will try to tempt a person to commit suicide. I had a woman who had bought a ceramic doll on eBay. Okay. And as soon as she got it, she just felt something wasn't right. She felt there was something unnatural wrong about it. So she had all kinds of problems. She went back and forth. Then she started hearing voices of two individuals, an older woman and a younger man that she claimed were talking to her, that they had committed suicide some time before. They wanted her to join them because it was very beautiful and wonderful. She really became problematic, and she actually sent the doll back. But see, she had already opened the door, and she started listening to the voices. We sent her to, the psychiatrist. She was on medication. She hated the medication because she said it made her feel like a zombie. And one day I got an email from her, a text message from her mother telling me that she had actually taken her life the night before. She had taken an overdose of medication. She had taken alcohol, and she slit her wrists. They finally convinced her to kill herself, which she did. So it's one of my sad cases where, and again, it all came down to a cursed object, which she bought and brought into her home. Wow. And then she followed through and listened to the voices that were attached to it.
And I'm curious to know what you think of this one, though, just for the sake of our discussions together. What do you think of this?
This guy had a friend who he personally saw do things that were not supposed to be possible. You only see in Marvel movies. Superhuman speed and physically growing in front of him. Background story of it is when he was a kid, he was recruited to work for an entity and he accepted. And when he did that, it took him into this whole other life where he would access other realms through, first to be sleep dreaming and lucid dreaming. Yeah. But then it got to the point where, and this guy who I'm talking to told me that it happened right in front of him. He called his friend because his brother was going through something. He's like, I don't know who to call. I'm going to call my friend who does this weird stuff. And he shows up and his friend says to him, it's going to get weird right now. I need you to stay calm. Wow. And he said, then his friend grew like 7 inches in front of him. And when he was done growing, looked at him and said his friend's name and said, he's not here right now, but he'll be back soon. And he invites this thing into his house. He's like, it looked like him, but it didn't look like him. And then when his friend came back, he shrunk back down. He was exhausted and he walked away and he said, I got to go home and rest. But I say this because I know it sounds like a movie, but I was able to track down people connected to this story who verified this. Yeah. And nobody seems to want to actually come out and talk about it except for this one guy who wasn't directly involved in this big story. And so it's an ongoing thing, I suppose. But I say this because one of the things that I was faced with was like, if this is true, like we're talking about something, recruiting people to work for it. Mm-hmm. And then in the time that I first heard that story, other people were coming to me saying the same thing that I hadn't aired it yet. Like nobody knew that I had this story. Wow. And I was like, what is going on? And I've uncovered, it has to be like at least a dozen of people's stories that haven't all been on the show because they don't want to talk. Like the one guy, I called him and he walked off the factory floor that he was working at night. Within 3 minutes, he's sobbing, maybe 30 seconds, crying his eyes out, scared to tell his wife what he's been through. He cuts it off. And we were supposed to record, and he told me, he's like, listen, since I talked to you, things have been getting really bad and weird. I'm scared. Lose my number. Don't ever talk to me again. Yeah. And so we never talked again.
And for the last clip that I'm sharing with you in this video will be this one from Father Joseph Iannuzzi. And as always, I hope all of you have learned so much from this one.
We cannot receive continuous infused knowledge on earth. Despite what some people claim, God speaking through infused knowledge to me all the time, this is not true. God never operates with his mystics through continuous infused knowledge. He gives them wasps of light, infusions of illumination through infused knowledge, but these are intermittent and rare. So the idea of someone not needing to consult, let's say, the teachings of Scripture, the teachings of the Church, because God speaks to them directly is false revelation.
I'm going to keep including case studies and clips like these and follow them up with what the priests have to say. Thank you so much for the feedback on this. It's really helpful. And that is it for the video this time, and I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to be here and for your continuous support this year, and I really hope all of you have learned a lot here. And remember, if ever you have any feedback or suggestion, please let us know in the comments below. Anyway, if you like what we do and you'd like to support us, I left a link to our PayPal donation in the description box below, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contributions, and prayers. And until the next one, thanks again for watching, and may God bless you.
Doing a great work today. His work hasn't ended just because he died. He said in one of his epistles that I will stand at the gates of heaven and waiting until my last spiritual child enters. So consecrate yourself to Saint Padre Pio. Become his spiritual child. Send your guardian angel to him. He asked people to do that to him when he was on earth. Why not stop? Why stop doing it now? You can still send him your angel. And you can still consecrate him and make yourself his child. And he will still wait at the heavenly gates, as he said he would, waiting for you to enter, meaning he will pray that you get there. I recall, as I have in the past, meeting with my mentor in exorcisms, Father Gabriel Amor, who went to St. Padre Pio. He visited him many times. And one time, when he went to Padre Pio, he said, Padre, can you take my spiritual children under your protection so that I may be reassured that none of them will be lost? And Padre Pio looked at him intensely, smiled, and said, Va bene, figliolo, va bene. He said, yes, my son, yes. And then Father Armoth, jokingly, with his humor from Modena, Italy, where he came from, said, okay, Padre Pio, now they will no longer call you Padre Pio, but Grandpa Pio, because I'm their Padre, you're the grandpa. And Padre Pio chuckled. He had a good sense of humor, you know. Sometimes when people laugh, they make jokes. People say, oh, you're taking your religion too lightly. Well, they miss the whole point of the joy of the saints. You know, Jesus tells Louisa to have the house of the resurrections built for priests, patterned after the spirituality of the saint of humor, Saint Philip Neri. He's known as the saint who knew how to smile, tell jokes, and laugh without losing his pace, his stride in holiness. And that's one of the things I think we're missing today. You know, there's a lot of sin, turmoil, confusion, evil, trouble in the world today, I believe more than ever in human history. Well, on a global scale, that is. Not on a concentrated scale, but on a global scale. I mean, concentrated in one area, that is. But globally, we're in the greatest time of all evil, I believe. And I think that because of that, people have forgotten the joy that Mother Teresa of Calcutta emphasized, so much so that she wouldn't allow the nuns to join her community unless they smiled. Yes, that's in fact what she told the nuns. I know this as a matter of fact because I met her twice and I spoke with her nuns. And I even read the only official autobiography on her life from a woman from Britain who lived with her. And I say it's the only official autobiography because Mother Teresa of Calcutta told Catherine Spink, spelled with a K, to publish her biography, and that it would be the official one only after her death. And Catherine Spink respected that. And in it, you'll find these truths, you know. And of course, the difficulty she went through founding the community, I mean, it was really, really difficult. One of the nuns that she began the order with was drowned in a flood in Bangladesh because the sari that she wore around her neck was wrapped around her when she was trying to swim. But she went through the fire, Mother Teresa. And the joy that she wanted to transmit to the poorest of the poor, the abandoned on the streets, especially in Calcutta, could only be communicated by a smile, because she didn't initially know their language, and most of them were not even Catholic. And this is why she wore white and a crucifix right beside her shoulder on her chest, so that the first thing she said they would see and the last thing would be Jesus crucified. Why did she wear white? She tells you why. She said, yes, the clergy wear black because they mourn the death of Christ. And that's in fact what the Pope, who established black as the color for the clergy, stated. We're mourning the death of Christ. Mother Teresa added, rightly so, yes, Christ has died, but without the resurrection, the death of Christ has no value. And she's completely right theologically. The crucifixion is not an end in itself. There's no Easter without a Good Friday. And there's no Good Friday without an Easter. So there's nothing wrong with the clergy wearing white, including the nuns. And I say this because there are people out there that refuse to welcome any clergy unless they're wearing the traditional black, and they walk a certain way, and they talk a certain way, and they bend their head when they pray a certain way, and fold their hands a certain way. This is not how God operates, okay? God said there are many mansions in heaven. He doesn't limit himself to one rite, one external observation, one clothing or garment. Small-minded people do. I'm not putting anyone down. I'm simply telling you that God is bigger than human measurements and human categories. The Eastern Rite has all 7 sacraments, just as the West, and they are no less valid than ours. They do not genuflect, they do not fold their hands like we do, but they do it according to their own right. They do not wear the same colors that we do. So this is how we must grow in the divine will, with an ecumenical Christian outlook like the apostles had. The apostles were not scholastic, they were not patristic, they were both. They were universal. This split between the East and West, patristic, scholastic, Orthodox, Catholic, began in 1054 with the schism. But in the beginning, it wasn't like this. And that's why the new theology, it's called new theology, but it doesn't mean new that we're adding anything to that which has been taught, but we're explicating, as the Article 66 of the Catholic Catechism states, that which has been revealed but not fully understood. So you have the patristic theology that covered the first 1,000 years of theology, the scholastic, which is East Orthodox patristic. Then you have the scholastic, which is Western Latin scholastic, which covered the second 1,000 years. And then you have, in the last 150 or 200 years, what's called this ressourcement theology. And this includes the great theologians of these last times, like Yves Congar and Garrigou de Lagrange, and who was a professor of Pope John Paul II, and also Karol Wojtyła and Joseph Ratzinger, and Urs von Balthasar, and Jacques Danielou, and Henry de Lubac, and the list goes on and on. These were all the people I studied, whose materials I studied, including those of the patristics and scholastics. All of these I mentioned are ressourcement theologians. What do? They combine the first 2,000 years of Greek theology, which is patristic, with the second 1,000 years of scholastic theology, which is Latin, into one synthetic expression of faith, which was the way it was in the beginning. And this is a theological expression of what I think we should all welcome externally when it comes to different ways of dressing, reverencing, or expressing our faith by genuflecting or bowing or folding our hands or clasping our hands or holding them down like the Orthodox do.